Hello and welcome to another episode of A House in France. In fact, this is episode number 10, so we've made it to our 10th anniversary. And we're here in the TTFN TV studio, and I am joined, as always, by my co-host, Lloyd Arrow. Lloyd, welcome again.
Yeah, and it's great to be back in the studio, not suffering the problems of Skype. And I've noticed there have been some technical additions as well.
We continue to improve things in the studio, but you've got to be a little bit quiet about it because I'm not sure that the person who handles the finances is really aware of what we're doing, but we are getting there. We're continuing to improve the lighting, the sound, everything, and we're having good fun doing it, but it's making a real difference to our production, so that is good. And of course, Spike is still here, which is pretty good, because I was convinced I would forget to water Spike, but I have managed to remember. So hopefully, as episodes go by, he'll get bigger and bigger, and we'll get lost. But we're not just joined by Spike, of course, are we?
No, we have indeed our producer, Peter.
Evening, guys.
Right. It's we really appreciate Peter being with us, and he wants to make sure he gets on the screen. Did you see that? Not only does he lingers, he also puts a little bit of audio in now. By the next episode, he'll be dancing behind us or something.
Power's going to his head already.
Yeah, it is. And we've been here for a few hours today. We've had one or two difficulties, but we're getting there. So we're going to look at all sorts of things today, sort of a general episode.
Yes, indeed. We've put some links on. I'll put some links on some websites, including Facebook, of the last episode of A House in France, which received some favourable comments. Apart from the film star one, I can't vouch for those.
Well, it must have been talking about me, of course. I mean, it couldn't have been talking about you. I'm sure, Lloyd.
No.
But mustn't let it go to our heads.
Absolutely.
But on a serious note, we thank you for those who have made some very nice comments about the last episode. We were having problems with Skype, and why that was, we don't know. Lloyd is not very far away from me here, and we were always having problems. But other people that we've had on other shows from thousands of miles away have been perfect and been no problem with the picture. So why, we don't know, but it's great to be here. Now, in the last episode, we both talked about our trips to France, but Lloyd had the exciting trip because he'd seen the house he's having built in the flesh for the first time. So has there been any progress since then, or I guess not over the summer?
No, that's right. There's not really been much change since the last time I was actually there. It's kind of like in France for most of August, people tend to go on holiday, and nothing really happens till September when the children go back to school, as they call it, le rentrée, which is officially like the start of the new term. So that's nothing really much going to be happening till then, unless you've got expat builders, of course, where they don't suffer the same holiday issues, shall we say. And according to French reports, there's been some changes in the sort of traditions, the way people work out there. While we're familiar in the UK of the bank holiday weekends where all and sundry end up going to sort of the DIY stores, the French have, I think, started to embrace the idea of DIY. Not on the same scale as B&Q and Homebase. They've got their Leroy Merlin, Monsieur Bricolage, and they're not just busy with foreign buyers as well. So hopefully this will encourage the price and competitiveness of DIY products for us over in France.
Yeah, I mean, it's most of the bricos I do find expensive. Monsieur Bricolage especially seems to be very expensive. They like to charge a lot of money for not very much. There is one chain, which is Brico Dépôt, which are a lot more competitive, but there aren't so many of them around. They tend to be in the big cities. But I would encourage you to dig out, find a Brico Dépôt. The other thing that Brico Dépôt do, if you get there at the right time of year, is they have a fantastic catalogue. I mean, it's a good sort of 15 mil thick of everything they do, and I sort of use it as a reference. So if you can't remember the different sizes of copper piping in France, you can go and have a look in that, and that works very well. Their pricing is pretty good, and in fact, I think their pricing is probably better than B&Q in this country, which is a little bit surprising because they're owned by the Kingfisher Group, which is the same group that owns B&Q. But we've actually brought stuff back. So normally we take things out there. Paint is the obvious one that everybody takes out because of the cost in France. But we have brought back tools, hose pipe fittings, much better quality than over here. So there is a two-way thing. But generally, I think you're right. Things are expensive for the DIY. But the DIY stores are a great place to meet other expats as well. As you said, they are pretty full of them, and we've met a few people there. Both people we know, we just happen to bump into, and others.
I suppose they're quite obvious in comparison to the French that are out there.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, the Brits normally have huge trolleys full of stuff they're doing up their houses, and the the French are standing there wondering which particular lampshade colour to get. But it's good fun. People watching in Brickos is a good sport.
I did ask some locals in the village where the house is being built why French people don't spend time and money on DIY. And the answer kind of like surprised me, really. They said they do DIY, but it's all done on the inside. They tend to do up the inside, but leave the outside as in its original condition. I think it's something to do with the tax man, shall we say.
There is a thing where they don't want people to know they have money, I think. And that's probably why you don't see many garden centres in France. There tend to be a fair number of Brickos or DIY stores, but very few garden centres. And maybe that's because that will be seen as a sign of people spending money outside of their house. But there are some big, very visible DIY projects, and that's the DIY house building. I'm not sure if it's the same in the area where your house is being built, but in our area, in the last 5 years, there probably have been 2, 3, 4 houses that have actually been built by the people themselves. And it tends to be, like everything in France, a very social occasion. You only see people working at the weekend, when they're not working, but they have all their friends around. There are lots of cars there. There's people, in the summer, cooking food and sitting there drinking, etc. And these houses, they might take a couple of years to build, but they do get built. And I think it's you help somebody, then they help you. So that's pretty good. I haven't seen that in the UK.
No, probably more of a American thing, I'd imagine, self-build or Swedish, that type of thing. But going back to the holiday side of things, where I mentioned that France is going back. French go on holiday. One of the things you have to bear in mind out there is that unlike the UK, France is a much bigger place, and with that you have to do quite a bit of planning beforehand. Especially if you're driving down. There are many tools that you can use for this, and on the internet or by other means. And if you're using motorways, which I would imagine most people would do to get where they want to be, there are a lot of service areas, or aire de service, as they call them, along the way. They range from basic picnic areas to fully serviced ones with fuel, accommodation, eating areas, etc. In my search for this quest on the internet, trying to map out where all the actual service stations were, I couldn't actually find a particular website that had all this information. So therefore I thought, well, I'd do one myself. So with that, in conjunction with Google Maps, I've started mapping out service areas across France. And it's a collaboration project, and if you'd like to join me in this, you can send me an email at lloyd@ttfn.tv.
So that's great. So hopefully you'll have a few volunteers to help with that. So is there going to be a link? Can we put a link up to the Google Maps?
Absolutely, yeah. We'll post one on the website,
and then people can have a look at that. Now, do you know the answer to the great question about French service stations? And that question is, how come the average UK house has more toilets than the average French service station?
Well, I think actually on that particular subject, there are certain questions that should be left unanswered.
Yeah, that probably is one of them. How many times have you queued in a French service station for the loo, though? Come on.
Well, a few, shall we say. And they're not all up to the same standard.
No, they're not. I mean, you go into a service station on the M1 and there are, 50 loos in the gents, and, there are 4 or 3 or something in most of the service stations I go into. But anyway, it give us something to talk about and moan about. It just seems one of those very strange things. Now, as you're travelling around in France and you're going to the service stations, etc., there are a lot of useful tools available now around with some of the technology. If you have a smartphone such as the iPhone, or you have an iPad, there are some great applications to help not just with travelling and with things like route planning and where you are, but also in translation. Things from a dictionary. I have a fixed, standard standalone dictionary on my iPhone, which has been very useful. But on the iPad, there are quite a few applications that help you to translate sentences and phrases. And we're going to have a look at one of those today. So we switch over and look at the iPad screen. Then we can have a look at an application called iTranslate. So if I just flick and try and find it, and there it is at the top in the centre, called iTranslate. And we'll just clear that. And it basically, it does lots of things, and there are many applications that do this. I'm not saying that this is the best. This just happens to be one that I use. Now, this is the free version, which is why it has an advert in it. And I think it's $1.99 or $2.99 if you to purchase it. The ads don't tend to bother me. And what you can do is to just type in it and it'll translate. It isn't just English, French. It has lots of other languages, if you Arabic or Chinese traditional, etc. The important thing to know about this app is that it has to be connected. So you have to have an internet connection. And obviously, the faster your internet connection, the faster it will work. It also has the ability to speak and help you with how things are pronounced. But I'm just going to show it in a very simple way. So we're going to type in here in English, hello, Lloyd, how are you? So there we go. Probably not, well, I'd probably say bonjour Lloyd, ça va, but that's it's just the translation tool. It's not always perhaps as perfect as you would expect it to be, but let's say, have you got a small tractor for sale? Avez-vous un petit tracteur à vendre? So there you are. See, it's not bad. I mean, it might not be exactly the way that I would phrase it, but it's actually quite a useful tool. I found it very useful with preparing for conversations on the phone, not just for booking restaurants, which is pretty straightforward, but if you want to book a doctor's appointment or something like that, a little bit out of the ordinary, just to go through and get some standard phrases is great. Now, as I said, I don't particularly recommend this one. It's one I happen to use. There are several others. But the most important one, I think, for me is the standalone dictionary on the iPhone. That's been used many, many times.
Yes, I've got a useful app that I found on the Android side, which is done by a company called Vinci Autoroute. They actually manage a number of service stations across France. Not all of them, but a number of them. And with that, it gives you a lot of information about the actual service areas themselves. If you're connected to Wi-Fi, then you can also get real-time updates as well. Obviously not advisable unless you're actually in a service area.
Right. So this is our 10th episode, and what we've done in each episode is to give a couple of websites that we use and that people might find useful. Now I have to admit that this is the 10th episode. I tried to find what was my 10th favourite website, and I was at a loss. I typed into Google France and to see what came up, and I found one that I was really surprised by, and I don't know why, and that was actually on Wikipedia. So this is, just go open Wikipedia, and do a search on France, and it comes up with some really interesting information about France, a lot of the history and the background, and it helped fill in some gaps for me in French history. And most of the websites that I have looked at before have been very practical. You want to do this or want to do that, whereas this is just general information about France. And I'd recommend it as a pleasant 5 or 10 minute read, and hopefully you'll learn something from it.
And I've looking with the sticking with the traffic side of things, found a website which is actually sponsored by the French government, and that is bison-futé.gouv.fr, and that is the correct spelling. I did check it out, but if you go on there, you can actually select the English language as an option as well. But that gives you, again, real-time information on traffic situation over in France.
That's good. So, and again, if you stop and you have a smartphone or whatever that's connected, stop at a service station, you can check the rest of the route, for example. So that's another great selection. Well, that's it for this episode. We try and keep these episodes brief, but we do appreciate comments from you. If you have ideas, things you want us to cover, then drop either of us an email. So I'm at mark@ttfn.tv, or you can follow me on Twitter at ttfntv if you want to, and you'll get all the tweets about all the various shows that we do on TTFN TV. Or you can send Lloyd an email at lloyd@ttfn.tv.
And that's it for this episode, and we hope you'll join us again soon for another episode of Un House in France.
À bientôt.